We now have our last panel, which will be focusing on some issues related to community engagement, but also to value chains and SME development as we undertake the just transition. I'm going to call upon Ganju, who is Director and Head of Operations for Indalo Inclusive. Indalo supports eco and inclusive enterprises in South Africa and in various sectors, including the sectors that are assumed to be part of the just transition. We can get Rich and your panel up. Rest Ganju, please, and your panel up on stage. I will then hand over to you for the next half an hour. Thank you. Good afternoon. Is this National Dance Great Respect Day? Good afternoon. That's better. Happy Africa Day. I'm not too sure if it's me or Mike. Am I audible enough? Thank you so much. So I'm a bit short, so I probably would want to stand a little bit behind where I'm on the side of the podium. But thank you so much. So my name is Ganju, and indeed I work for Indalo Inclusive, South Africa. I'm very humbled to be here. I think this session we've got about half an hour. And I think before we start, just the high-level remarks, we've heard from the previous sessions, and I think one of the things that, for me, is quite common as a thread in the discussions that we have in this space of just transition. Many times it feels like we are speaking amiss, we speak past each other. My understanding of just transition is simply that there are just two concepts in it. One is that of justice, and the other is that of change. When we are talking about change, I think we've got to be aware that the change is happening now. I think we've heard from the previous session, at least from Green Cave, from Jack, what he's been talking about, a lot of pipeline issues and development that's coming up, a lot of investment opportunities that are beginning to take place. The reality is that there are livelihoods issues. There are people on the ground that are going to be affected by some of these things, or they are currently being affected by this. I was told that I can share a little bit about the work that we do as I start introducing my panel members. So, Indalo Inclusive is a not-for-profit company. We're based in Victoria, and we support what we call equal and inclusive enterprises. We work in different sectors. We are very privileged that we happen to work in the coalface, excuse the pun, but in where the real issues are taking place, where communities interchange and interact with private sector. We have been privileged to be funded and supported by the EU through the SPIPA program managed by GIZ to implement the Just Transition Enterprise program in this very province. So we're excited about that. I want to introduce my panelists and allow me to welcome them quite quickly. I'm excited that the provincial department responsible for environment has actually asked us to be part of this. So on my left, the rose among the thorns, Lauren Hermanus from How We Adapt. She's going to say a little bit about her work, but she's a research analyst, and there's a lot of exciting work that she's been doing in this province in partnership with the Provincial Department of Agriculture and the Environment. And I've also got Neo, who is the Business Development Manager of Bushveld Energy. He's going to say a little bit about himself. And of course, a person who acts to the economist, he said, I must say that. From TIPS, Mohammed Patel. TIPS you'll say a little bit about what you do, but we're excited to have all of you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please give them a round of applause a little bit and just kind of break the ice? Is that all right? I think our microphones are sanitized. I'm going to pass my mic and just allow you to briefly introduce yourselves before we start. I apologize, Premier. I actually also realized I must profusely apologize for not recognizing leadership. So, Premier, MECs, executive mayors, district officials, good afternoon. Don't fire me from the progress. I'm the sign of this soil. So, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Hermanus, as was said, and I do a range of work in the area of just transition, but with a focus on really understanding subnational issues, so provincial level challenges in governance, as well as local municipal level challenges in governance as well.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kgatuke. I'm the head of business development at Bushveld Mineral, particularly focusing on the energy division. We at Bushveld, we are a listed mining house here in South Africa. We mine a very unique mineral, being vanadium, which plays very strongly on this just energy transition. It is non-degradable. We have also beneficiation operations here called Vencam in Mpumalanga. So we are intricately involved in this province. Our flagship mine is in the Northwest Province near Brits, and also we are busy developing another vanadium mine in Mpumalanga. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and greetings to all members of government and donor funders and everyone else who made it here today. My name is Mohammed. I'm a senior economist at TIPS, and that stands for Trade and Industrial Policy Strategy. It's quite a mouthful, and we're based in Pretoria. We've been working on just transition issues for the past number of years, and we have worked on the SJRP and NEVA study, the National Employment Vulnerability Assessment. We've also provided inputs to the PCC as well. And we're currently involved in a number of just transition initiatives in the region, in Mpumalanga, with a number of different consortium partners, most notably with UK PACT, the UK PACT program, the Africa program of the British High Commission. So I'm very fortunate to be here today amongst the panel.
Thank you very much. I think I'll start with you, Lauren. We recognize quite clearly and succinctly that both national government, we've seen the work that the presidential climate change panel has been doing around consultations. We've seen the work of the department, provincial department responsible for environment, developing a number of strategies in the province. But I think there's a level that we need to begin to kind of really understand, and that relates to the readiness of local municipalities and local authorities on the ground, both in terms of policy implementation, but also in terms of bringing into action the issues of just transition at that level. What's your perspective around that? What's the outlook from the work that you do?
Thank you very much for that question. So I'm going to start by saying that the work of government is governance. So what does that mean? It means all the legislation and regulations, policies and procedures that define the rules of the game for society as a whole. And the just transition is a multi-level governance problem.
It's a multi-level governance problem. It doesn't belong to one level of government. It is much like the decentralization and the distribution that we're seeing in energy infrastructure. This is a distributed problem. It manifests everywhere in society. And as such, local governments have an absolutely critical role to play. And what does this role look like? Well, it's also multiple. It also has different facets. But if I could summarize, it would be about, as our colleagues said earlier in the panel this morning, it is critically about service delivery. It is about a planning function. It is about regulation. It is about using local budgets and local infrastructure and local services to bring about just outcomes within this period of transition. So in terms of enabling local economic development specifically, there is a really critical role that local government has in order to adequately plan around many resources, but particularly, and something that's come up recurrently over this program over the last 2 days, is about the use of land. So who uses land and to what end? This is absolutely critical, especially to support the emergence of new industries, green industries that are emerging as well. And it's certainly something, it's very practical that local governments can do. In addition to this function, it is also about, and again, this is I'm really thrilled to hear this among stakeholders earlier. It is about bringing about a coherence and alignment between different plans that local governments have to implement. So that includes the integrated development plans, spatial development frameworks, local economic development plans, and now, of course, also the COVID recovery plans. And in bringing all of this together, it's not just the local municipalities, but particularly also the district municipality, and particularly through the DDM model, that has a really important role to play in ensuring coherence across different levels of government, and in then building a bridge between the local level of government and the provincial government as well. And the provincial government, of course, in turn, functions as a bridge, as a threshold, as several points of connection between national policies and what is happening on the ground. So at a high level, I would say, I hope that answers your question.
It's really quite a mouthful, it does feel, Lauren, and I'm just going to pass this to Mohammed in a moment, that we are a learning country. As a country, it feels like we're an institution of higher learning. There's a lot of knowledge, a lot of skills transfer. But I think it may be looked at as almost a situation where we're stuck in rhetoric. And often we find that there's a disconnect between national policy and local government policy. We're just going through and just going through these public consultation processes with the GFFE and the Just Transition Framework. And tips, Mohammed, you guys have really done quite a bit in providing input into that process. The question I have for you is, what do you think we can learn from that process at the local level? Is there anything that local government or provincial government can learn from those processes? And especially taking into consideration the work that has been done so far in this province.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah? Okay, cool. So thanks so much for the question. Very, very helpful. So look, as you say, we've been fortunate to have moved through this process with some of the TCC engagement, with some of the inputs. And I guess I could summarize it in a few points, and this mainly comes from the nature of inclusivity and the concept of inclusivity reflection. So when in our work in TCC engagement, what we see, a big challenge that we see is that you engage with communities around the just transition. You say, look, for example, if you look at the coal value, we know we face risks on physical impact and quality. And we know that in 10 to 20 years, the intensity of coal in our economy is not going to be the same. So we need to plan for that process, right? And to plan for that process and to imbibe the quality of inclusivity, we need engagement with the community as to what do the community want? What is the future economic structure that they want to be a part of 10, 20 years from now in places like in Australia? But to get people in that cognitive headspace, you need to get them to divorce themselves from the day-to-day challenges that they face. So issues around your municipal service delivery, sanitation, etc. And that's a challenging task, very difficult. So it brings to the fore the need, and it's echoed in the TCC framework as well, the need for your basic service delivery to be on track and to be functioning. Because in a way, if you have that going, you can then get people to think, okay, this is what I want to see my landscape looking like 10 to 20 years from now. The other thing also is that there needs to be, and this is starting to play out in the engagement as well, there needs to be a strategic approach to community engagement. Right? If you've got 10 energy experts in a room and you ask them to tell you what is the best economic structure for Mpumalanga in 10 years from now, right? If there was one economist there, you probably get 20 answers, right? But the point is that even people who do this on a day-to-day basis, on the bread and butter, may have different opinions. So you need to provide communities with the information that they need so that they can digest it and then they can give you what you need. Because in some of the engagement, we see that communities are hungry for knowledge. They want to know, show us a solar plant, take us to a solar plant, put up a model in our community so that we can see it, we can touch it, we can feel it, we know what it's about. Because in the absence of that information, it becomes very difficult for people to engage on what you present. So that's just some of the insights that we received from the community engagement. And so I can elaborate more on them.
Great. Thank you so much. When you talk of inclusivity, I can talk until the kettle come home. As Indalo inclusive, we really see these kind of things happening on the ground, and people really at the core of the issue is about jobs. It's about livelihoods. It's not so much about so many other things. And we have the responsibility as private sector, as government, as intermediate organizations, to make sure that as we drive profits, as we do what we do best, we need to be cognizant that we need to be responsible. That is about livelihood issues, about bread and butter issues. Now, I'm particularly excited to have you here representing private sector, and from the point of view of Bushveld, I'll be quite keen to hear practically what are you doing from green, low carbon, economy, and transition point of view as a company, but also how is that impacting on the livelihoods of people on the ground? People come to you, they look for jobs. What's your preparedness in terms of the transition, and what some of the issues that you're dealing with currently that are helping people transition and getting more greener and cleaner jobs?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, for the question. As a company, we had a look at this agenda and the journey of just transition. And going just beyond mining the vanadium, we set up a company whereby we also beneficiate the vanadium that's mined underground, and also we produce an electrolyte from the vanadium, and we've got a very unique product called the vanadium redox flow battery, which plays in the long duration energy storage system. So, as we all know, it's all good to have a solar plant that's producing when the sun is there, but when there's cloud and when there is rain days, you don't really get to use most of that energy. So hence, this is where the product that we develop, as a company, comes in. And we're also very fortunate to be supported by the government. We are building in IDZ in East London. It's going to be the largest vanadium electrolyte production facility outside China. and it's going to be here in our home soil. We're going to be producing about 200 megawatt hours of electrolyte. And just to tie back to when I was setting the scene for our company and what we do as vanadium. Vanadium, because it's non-degradable. So this is how we are also decarbonizing, as a mining company. So that's just, the one leg that we are doing as a business. Just to talk about jobs, that plant is in construction phase now. We will be creating about 58 jobs. And that is really as green as it gets in terms of the energy and also contributing in terms of this agenda. That's the one leg that we do. Then on our flagship mine, we're building a 4 megawatt mini grid. Again, we will be having a solar plant upstream, and then we will also be having this vanadium redox flow battery capturing the energy that the solar plant produced and feeding the mine. 7% of our current mine, electricity consumption will come from that. So we are reducing obviously the carbon, emissions that the mines is associated with, and we're also creating jobs that those initiatives will be, contributing. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. I get excited when you talk about value chain opportunities. One of the things that you'll hear reverberating in the ecosystem is the need for a pipeline, and that the banks like RMB are not interested in small tickets, type of investments. They're looking for big investment opportunities. And I do think that one of the areas that we need to look for as a society, it's in these value chain opportunities that are provided by private sector. So in your case, you look for local entrepreneurs that can be suppliers of goods and services within your system, and then be able to grow. And soon enough, they'll be able to attract your RMB, your IDCs, and other banks, in the climate finance space. So, Regiments, I hope I'm doing a good job in thinking your area session in mind, right? Yeah. You can clap hands for me, so I take it very well good. Thank you. Dr. Olga, I'm also applying for a job at your office. So. All right. Lauren, coming back to your earlier inputs, and I think as we try and wrap up and kind of put everything together, I've kind of titled this session, from policy to practice, right? And you've done a lot of work in terms of analysis of the ecosystem from that angle. And you've also done a bit of work in the health service Sibanda district. I'm quite curious to, you spoke earlier about the fact that is a multi-layered institution. You talked about integration. What are some of the lessons that we can begin to see at Sibanda, and one of the things that we can learn from that level, from a readiness point of view, as far as just condition is concerned?
So, I think what can be acknowledged up front is that Kgatuke and Indalo district municipalities are very much aware of the challenges and have gone quite some way to try to understand the nature of the challenges that they face, and that the people and the businesses that reside within their districts also face. So that understanding, which is actually absolutely critical to inform implementation, is there. But it is now about moving from that understanding to action, and that is hugely challenging. I think that although obviously there's a set of expertise that go into policy development, and some of us up here are involved in those processes, implementation is where the rubber hits the road. It's not about the what, it's about how. And South Africa is certainly not alone in the challenge of moving from policy to implementation. And I think this is now where we need to direct all of our attention. I do think that it is about working wherever we sit, within the private sector, within different pockets within the public sector, within a sort of the advisory ecosystem. It is about partnering, working with institutions to make sure that our local governments, the districts and local governments, survive and thrive actually through this transition. And I think that Mohammed made a really critical point. There is no hope of a just transition if we cannot keep water flowing
we can't put the lights on for people, we can't keep people home. If these basic building blocks are there, then we can have lots of fancy talk about innovative opportunities in the transition, within the green economy that we are navigating towards. But these building blocks, of which local governments are the custodians, they are absolutely essential. That I can't stress that enough. And if we're going to be assisting local governments through this process, particularly acknowledging the role of the private sector in terms of keeping service delivery and infrastructure going in the province, as the coal sector declines, what are we going to do concretely to make sure that infrastructure not only remains adequately maintained, but is actually upgraded in order to deal with the shifts that we're wanting to see within our local economies as well?
Great, thank you. Talking about local government action, now, from a private setup perspective, what's your experience as Bushveld in terms of your engagement with government, local government in particular, in as far as bringing about socio-economic opportunities for communities that you serve where you are operating?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, for the question. Obviously, as a mining company, we operate under the auspices of the MPRDA. We have social and development in our mines and operation. And I must say, we have been fortunate in that the engagement with the government has been very fruitful. Of course, more can always be done. I mean, we just are going through this era whereby even with the NERSA, the regulation around allowing PV plants that are below 100 megawatts to be obviously just registered. Those, if we can just reduce more of the red tape, because we are realizing that if the government can give us more support in reducing the red tape, the sooner we can keep on creating jobs and also powering this country. We are very fortunate as Bushveld in that, unlike the coal sector whereby they are looking at winding down, we are looking at actually ramping up the production of vanadium and also ramping up developing mini-grids. So part of the work that we do at Bushveld Energy is development of mini-grids. And there's another key project that we're also working in the government. Part of the technology that we deploy, in the vanadium Redox flow battery, we are also looking at also producing some parts here in South Africa to make sure the membranes, we're using our local skills. We don't have to import as most of the equipment. So that's really been our experience. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, let's clap hands to localization, Premier. Good stuff. Thank you so much. I think that's what we want to see, action on the ground. And talking about that, Mohammed, as we conclude, the next question for me resonates quite strongly with what we do as an organization, as Indalo. But I do know that you've spent a bit of time looking at some of these value chain opportunities. But specifically for me, I'm quite curious to know what are some of the low-hanging fruits as we transition to a low-carbon economy, from either an entrepreneurial point of view or from just pure local economic interventions.
So let me start with the caveat that institutions like the Green Cluster Agency are really there for project identification and implementation. So when we did work on this in the SPFC, it was very much in provisional scoping of potential near-term opportunities, but it wasn't down to the level of actual financial feasibility. So that's just a caveat. So there are obviously a number of opportunities that emerge in Mpumalanga, right? So we know there's a lot of maize and soya, there's a lot of agricultural production that happens in the region. And particularly when you look at mining rehabilitation and the potential to rehabilitate the soil, that is a process that needs to happen, and it takes a number of years for the land to be rehabilitated. But there are scientific sort of interventions that one can use to speed that process up. For example, we know at a lot of the ESCOM power stations, there's a lot of ash that's created from burning of coal. So ash potentially can be used to revitalize and improve the fertilizer value of the soil. That's one option that links your kind of circular economy principle with a potential new value chain. I'm not an expert in the field, but I know it's possible and it's a potential. Another potential is the use of or the beneficiating of coal ash. So you can beneficiate coal ash to produce cement, to produce bricks, and those can be used in community housing projects, for example, or to build schools or other type of structures that can be an asset to the community. That's another option. But that obviously is linked to the life of coal burning. So it's unlikely to have a very long-term view. So the costs and benefits need to be weighed up in terms of how long such an asset and economic activity will last. Mining rehabilitation, there's lots of opportunities over there as well in terms of repurposing infrastructure, repurposing power stations. ESCOM is busy with their process as well around looking at what to do with all of this infrastructure once the power stations have been decommissioned. In many other countries, they've really explored a lot of options, like Germany, for example, turning open cast mines into lakes, for example, adventure sports. I mean, the list is endless. So there's a lot of potential opportunity there. We already know that Mpumalanga is the energy heart of the country, with all the generation capacity here. So there's also opportunities for Mpumalanga to hold on to that in some ways, with opportunities like renewable energy and renewable energy beneficiation, like hydrogen production, and all of the value chains that opens up as well. Some of them are economically viable right now. Some of them still need to be proven in terms of production pathways, but that represents another key opportunity that we see. And we know some big players in the space, like Tesla, for example, are quite involved in looking at different ways of producing green hydrogen, and developing the value chain throughout the country and the region. So those are a handful of the opportunities. There may be more that emerge with the institutions like the CAFTA agency, but those are some of the value chain opportunities that one could think of.
Thank you so very much. And I'm glad as you were enlisting all of these opportunities. I just got inspired and I thought, it's a spare message to you and the provincial department for environment. Next time when we have this kind of summits, it will be so nice that we not only have one EV, park day exhibited. Let's see some of these things beginning to come out and expose our people to them, because I believe strongly that people can only innovate to the level of their exposure. If we don't start showing people these practical examples and practical energy opportunities, innovation cannot happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, the MC and the chair of the session today has just whispered that the food smells nice and he's hungry, so I must conclude. So thank you so much. Thank you.